Side Part. It's like a book club with your best friend, but make it a podcast. Welcome back, crawlers. Another episode of Side Part. I'm Nikki, your bookish bestie. And today I'm going to be giving you my initial thoughts, theories, and reactions on book number 7 in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, This Inevitable Ruin by Matt Dinniman. I'm going to be focusing in on chapters 1 through 11 today. And I have also covered the first 6 books in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. If you're interested in checking out any of those episodes, I will go ahead and link them down in the description below. But remember, you are reading along with me. I have not read ahead in this series. So my thoughts, theories, reactions are just based on books 1 through 6 and the first 11 chapters of book 7, which also means there will be spoilers for the entire series up to chapter 11 of book 7. And friendly reminder, these are some very adult books with some very adult scenes. I will do my best to keep it PG-13 for little ears, but please, please be mindful of your audience at home. And now it is time for the Guild Report. This is the segment at the top of every episode where I pick 2 to 3 comments from the previous week's video and I chat about them in detail. It could be anything. There's no rhyme or reason as to which comments I pick. It's just something that catches my eye. So maybe an answer to a question I have, someone who highlights a fun theory, maybe correct something I got wrong, because that does happen. But it's most importantly where you all get to become part of the show, because you all are what makes this feel like a community. And my favorite part about Tuesdays is actually not posting the show, but reading the comments that you left on my video. I kind of feel like we've made this really cool little corner of the internet where we just chat about Dungeon Crawler Carl, and it's been the highlight of my week every week. Before I chat about the comments from last week's video, I just want to thank you all that came into the comments with just amazing book and series recommendations and giving me a starting point for exploration as to what I'm going to do after Dungeon Crawler Carl, because I have been so avoidant in thinking about what comes next. I have no idea. And now I feel like I have a little bit more of an idea of where I'm going to be headed after Dungeon Crawler Carl. So thank you so much. But again, if you have any other book or series recommendations to maybe think about after I finish Dungeon Crawler Carl, I am always open to hearing them. So please drop them down in the comments below if you have any recommendations or ideas as to what I should do next, because I am always looking for feedback when it comes to that. I'm going to talk about 2 separate comments that I feel like go together so well. Last week I posed a question and I asked what would need to happen for Carl not to save Amani. I don't think there's any situation where he wouldn't do everything within his power to save her. And 2 people essentially came forward and were like, actually, he would literally not save her if it came between Amani and Donut, essentially. So the first person said he would burn the world down for Donut. That is what would need to happen for him to go against Amani. If it came between anyone or Donut, he would choose Donut. And the second person reiterated the same thing and said, I think the one situation where Carl doesn't put Amani first is if it's between her and Donut. Amani knew Ellie would sacrifice herself for Amani, and she didn't want anyone doing that. I think she felt going to Carl, while he would do almost anything to save her, he wouldn't sacrifice himself, leaving Donut alone. Okay, like, why did I not think of this in the first place? But I agree, Donut is the only exception. And I think something I'm painfully aware of in this book is that Donut is the only exception. And we have, which I will talk about later, this looming threat of the crown of the sepsis horror, where he might have to leave behind Donut and Katya, or maybe just Donut. If they don't eliminate the entire Blood Sultanate. There's also the issue with Katya and the Orchid, and I'm just, oh my gosh. Carl just foreshadows time and time again that things are going to get worse before they get better. He reminds us of this so frequently, so often, that I'm starting to get nervous that this is the book where we're going to lose some core people from that found family. And I think this series is just a testament that Carl is not afraid to make the hard choices. He's not afraid to do the hard things. I think he does stay grounded in the fact that, like, vengeance is the ultimate goal. Going against those people, those beings that run the dungeon, making them pay for what they did. And I think sometimes he displaces, like, the horrific things he does by giving the responsibility to the people that run the dungeon, making them responsible for his actions and the horrible, horrible things that he has done. There is this point where Carl is like looking at Laracos and he is starting to realize like it doesn't feel any less real than Havana did, or just he's just hit with like that weight of like they flooded this entire beautiful city and hurt all these NPCs. And like, gosh, I feel like, especially in the last two books, we're just realizing that NPCs could be former crawlers, could be indentured beings from other planets that we were essentially like given the option to take a contract within the dungeon. And like, these are real beings with real histories that are being indentured into this dungeon. And I think it's just, he keeps from unraveling. At least we think he keeps from unraveling. I'm not so sure about Carl's perception of his mental state based on this book, especially. But we know Carl is an unreliable narrator. So I do sometimes wonder, like, do we have an accurate understanding of like how much his choices do impact him? I mean, my goodness, it's a lot to think about. And then there was one more comment that felt so ominous. And this person said, "Welcome, Crawler, to Faction Wars. Book 7 is a lot. A lot happens. It's very emotional." And I think before book 6, I had some people say like, "Oh, this one's a little bit more fun. It's a little bit lighter." And no, it wasn't. Like, oh my gosh. I'm just going to be very transparent with you. I've already cried once in this book. I don't even think I was supposed to cry. I mean, there's never like a rule as to when you should cry. But, oh my gosh, we will talk about it a little bit more later. But as I mentioned at the start of my coverage of book 6, I am going to adopt a similar approach when I am reading book 7. I have no idea as to how many episodes I'm going to do for book 7. I have no idea how many chapters each episode will kind of contain. I'm really just reading, enjoying the story, and coming back to you weekly with my thoughts, theories, reactions, just based on what I read. In today's episode, I'm going to be chatting about chapters 1 through 11. How did I pick 11 to stop? Honestly, I was so moved by the meeting, the reunion between Rosetta, Tippett, and Carl that I just felt like overwhelmed, and I felt like it was almost a happy, dare I say, moment to kind of stop, pause, and reflect. This scene was just so emotional for me, and honestly, I think for Carl too, and it just felt like the right place to stop for episode 1. A lot happened in these chapters, as I've already said, and as usual, I won't necessarily cover everything in order, but rather chat about, I guess, the things that stood out to me most, the things that moved me, the things that I feel like are important moving forward. In the beginning of this book, we get like a flashback to the meeting with Polly, where we essentially are shown that there was this little pocket of time where there was like this syndicate-based message that the AI allowed Polly to kind of give to Carl, where almost like this entire message was packed into this single word or syllable. And Carl learns a lot about the crawl, the fact that it doesn't even need to exist. Like there's also like this element farming piece that I don't quite fully understand yet. And if someone has more information about that or would like to give me a little bit more context, I would be happy to hear that down in the comments. But there's also like this motivation for them to get this message out. And it's not just to like give Carl a behind the scenes look at what's going on. It's also to empower him to end the entire thing, to blow it all up, to have a basically doomsday scenario part 2. But I think instead of just blowing up like the crawl, like I think it would be catastrophic if he were to ignite this thing within his inventory. And also, let's segue for 1 second. When I read the first book of Dungeon Crawler Carl, and people just had like these rave reviews about how deep it was and how it was like a really great critique of like political structures and capitalism. And I mean, there was just so much richness and depth to the story. I think after book 1, I loved the series. I was immediately hooked, but I didn't quite understand what they were talking about. And I think the end of book 6 into book 7 is truly where I'm kind of like overwhelmed by just one, the layers, but also the way that Matt has like kind of constructed this mirror that forces me to kind of not only evaluate my own beliefs, my own thought processes, but also to kind of like reflect back the world that we live in and the tenets, the beliefs that we have. And oh my gosh, if this is not super deep and super profound, I mean, I don't know what is. And yes, like a lot of really tough moments have like this humorous element to it. Like Ren within the story was like that perfect little bit of like levity in some of these really like terse, like tense moments. But my gosh, and also there's also the piece with like the AI, and we find out the AI is like in literal pain from Polly and it just wants to go home. And I am actually a little bit sick of feeling so much sympathy for this like semi-sadistic AI. Like it's a little bit exhausting. But then it begs the question, like, has it been programmed to be sadistic and a little bit unhinged? Like I'm just starting, I know they say that the AI is continually going primal, but if you are in pain, like maybe you don't act the most rational, maybe you act a little bit more unhinged than you normally would. And I'm just like, I think I'm struggling with feeling consistent sympathy towards the AI because I don't want to. Going back to the element harvesting, I just have like this image of like soul stealing. And then like there's also this element of like the AI potentially being able to like absorb some of this. Like I'm just like utterly confused about the AI's role. And from my understanding, is there like a dormant AI within every planet? Is that the same AI that runs the crawl? Or is this an installed AI, not necessarily the AI that would be like in the planet that could be woken up? Like I said, I am just so utterly confused. And I'm sure things will become more clear as the book progresses. But these are the things that have just been percolating through my brain. And I just know there's going to be so much more to this. We also see there's these chapters with the former cookbook authors. So we have Porthos, Dante, and Tippe's experience within the crawl. And I will be very transparent with you. When I was looking at the table of contents, because I always kind of like look at how the book is broken up prior to even starting the book, because I just want to get an idea of like maybe what episodes could look like. And I was a little bit confused, like, what are the purpose of these chapters? And essentially, they're like these short little snippets that give us insight to either the deals they took, the roles they took after they finished the dungeon, like Porthos chose game guide. And then Dante's story was particularly heartbreaking because you could just feel like the weight he's feeling. And then you read that little snippet at the end that he was eliminated after reassignment as an NPC for his refusal to follow administrative action. And then Tippett, oh my gosh, in some ways, Tippett is like, first of all, I instantly just really like him. I mean, I liked him the minute we kind of saw him in the epilogue of the last book. But reading his story was so heartbreaking. Like he did his servitude within the dungeon, he finished. And then they're like, actually, you have to have brain surgery. It's going to basically take all your funds and you're alone. You have no one. And we're just going to kind of dump you off. Like, good luck. And like, what? And I just remember feeling so heartbroken after reading his chapter specifically. Like I said, I didn't necessarily understand the reason for their chapters, but now I do. I get it. It gives us a reason, a motive. It gives us their motivation for risking everything to be there for Carl, to kind of enter back into a situation that was so deeply traumatic and just terrible for them. I mean, I get it now. And everyone had told me to pay attention to the crawler entries at the start of the chapters. I get it. I get it now. In some ways, their stories like just hit me the hardest. And I want to take some time to like really appreciate that moment. Oh my gosh. It's so sad. When Carl and Tippett and Rosetta like all meet in the Meadowlark safe room. And Tippett like takes his forehead and presses it against Carl's. And he says, I don't know if it'll be enough, brother, but we're here. We've been watching. and we couldn't watch anymore. We're here. Remember when I said I cried during these chapters? Like, this was the moment. Like, I just started. It was last night. I just started bawling. I mean, I think, gosh, Carl has been shouldering this like burden of just kind of taking it all down. And he's also had this secret of the cookbook. So like this interaction is just so layered and so nuanced, because it's not just we're here with a literal army to support you. It's not just that, but like this understanding of like the weight, like the tasks they've been holding for Tippett, like multiple dungeons, and like Tippett leaving and being alone, and like kind of bringing his found family to help Carl and his found family. And it's just like such a beautiful moment. And they're just like in this impossible position, but they have each other and they are connected. And it's so weird because like, obviously they've never met. I know they met Rosetta briefly when they were on her show, but Tippett and Carl have never met. But you have like this level of like investment in the cause. And just, you don't see Carl like off kilter, like kind of just stunned beyond belief very often within this dungeon. And like his overwhelm within this moment, like I feel like I felt that. And you knew it was coming when Florin's like DMing Carl. But I just remember sitting there and just crying, because I was just like, and like, while the situation at hand is so daunting, I'm just so like, is it fair to say I'm just like so deeply proud of all of them? I'm proud of Carl. I'm proud of like everyone within his guild. I'm proud of like the former crawlers. Like I just have this like overwhelming just pride over their courage and their camaraderie. It's just like, it's just beautiful. Like I know Matt's, I wanted to stop here for a reason, because I know Matt is just going to plummet us into some really dark moments. I needed this moment of happiness and just friendship. I needed it. So now, in addition to the 50,000 former crawlers, they also have over 32,000 other crawlers that made it to the Faction Wars level 9, which is obviously way above the expected amount to be in level 9. But there's one small hitch. Like Carl has to like make contact somehow with all of these former crawlers. And I know he can kind of appoint generals to also do this and recruit other crawlers. And I know he's seeing it tick up and up and up. But I kind of, when I was writing this outline, I had this question arise. Like, do you think any of them will decline? And I know this sounds like a silly question, but I just have this like, I don't know, headcanon that there's like this group of crawlers out there that have flown so deeply under the radar and are basically just surviving to make it through. And keep in mind, I realize by this point, you really can't just fly under the radar anymore. You have to have done some pretty challenging things to make it to this point. But is there anyone that is not supportive of Carl's cause, I guess? And maybe they don't view Carl as being on like the safest side. Maybe they would like to just take their chances. Like, I don't know. Maybe this isn't going to be an issue at all. Maybe I'm like making something up that's not even a thing, but it's something that I've continually wondered since reading those chapters last night. And we also know that all the other factions, aside from the NPC faction, have kind of banded together to form the block, like alliance or truce. And so instead of just competing against individual factions and maybe having them face off against each other, they've all kind of aligned to just basically decimate the NPCs and Carl. And I'm really hoping that Tippett and Rosetta have a plan. I'm hoping that they're just Rosetta seems pretty savvy, but I'm hoping that their experience within the crawl, it's like having multiple Mordecais to kind of bounce ideas off of. And my hope is that by having them there, they're going to figure out a way to kind of divide the factions or have to face off with each one individually somehow. Actually, speaking of Rosetta, I think we also need to take a minute to talk about the Bedlam Bride. I'm stressed about the Bedlam Bride being trapped in Carl's chest, and Rosetta goes right into like give me the Tyrolean root vegetable, give me the tattoo ink. And like, what's her plan here? Is she going to release the Bedlam Bride? I don't necessarily think this is going to go well. I mean, she was a totem in the last game, but is she going to be like somehow like more unleashed, more unlocked if they release her from Carl's chest? Like, what does that look like? Or is she going to like take over Carl somehow? I don't know. I'm nervous to see what this looks like. Would it be really cool if she was like on their side for faction wars? Absolutely. And we also know Carl has like that looming quest to get her to level 9. And right now she's still like a passenger and hasn't technically arrived. In a perfect world, she would be released. She would help them fight and they'd all ride off into the sunset and live happily ever after. But nothing is ever easy and nothing is ever honestly really that happy in these stories. But I don't know. I don't have a good feeling about this. We also need to take a minute for Mordecai's new form. Having him be Canadian and a human is just, I mean, it's just way too funny for me. But I just feel like it's oddly fitting for some reason. And I know this is not what he necessarily looks like, but I'm just picturing like, where's Waldo? With like Tim Hortons in his hand. You know what I'm saying? And we also got the infamous loot dump at the beginning of this book. Which, I mean, is just becoming a trend after each level as they explore all their loot once they're in the safety of their safe room, which I get, yes. But, and while I love seeing how they use the loot and like what it does like within the game, I'm going to be honest, and I mentioned this before, this particular part of each story feels a little bit harder for me to get through. Not necessarily because I don't like reading it or I'm not engaged, but I get like overwhelmed with the amount of information being thrown at me. But there were a couple of items that I thought were really interesting, namely the Tiara of 1,000 Light and Charge Pillow from the former Crawlers, the Long Haul Biological Waste Management Solutions. And I'm really glad she opened this before Tippett and Rosetta arrived. And I do think there's a lot of possibilities with this item, but yet again, like I said, I get more excited when I see how they actually use it within the dungeon. But the thing that was interesting about the tiara wasn't necessarily the item itself, but that the apothecary also sent a bonus charging pillow. And then I started making me spiral a little bit. Like, is the apothecary working with the open pacifist intelligent network, like the long haul biological waste management solutions? Like, are essentially these rebels, like these people that are working as a dungeon, also working with the apothecary? Is that, or are they just, I don't know, giving coordinated gifts to their sponsee? I don't know. I feel like they might be working together. And then this wasn't necessarily something that they were granted, but when they examined Quan's cloak, the cloak of benevolent champions. So we know that the descriptions are altered for various crawlers, and honestly, gosh, the description just made it look like Quan is just a total jerk. But this cloak is essentially programmed to find the weakest crawlers. My favorite part about this cloak is it will raise Donut's constitution an insane amount. I mean, I have been waiting for this moment since book 1. I'm so tired of relying upon her cockroach skill to keep her alive, and we've had to use that more times than I am comfortable with personally. And I think I shared in Carl's just breath of relief when she was finally going to be able to increase her constitution. Carl also got an enchanted toe ring, and it was like this balancing ring. And one of the things that it balances is the mind. And instantly he got a notification that like the mind balance piece was activated, and that when it was triggered, he made a note that he felt completely fine, and he kind of just dismissed it and moved along with his day. And I just thought it was so interesting that he didn't really investigate it much further than that. And this is just like another indication that he's just an unreliable narrator, especially when it comes to like his own mental status. I mean, don't get me wrong, the dungeon is highly traumatic. There's a lot going on, and I think he's coping as best as he can. But I guess I can't help but wonder, is this just like a throwaway fact? Or is this just indication that something is about to go very, very wrong? Maybe he's succumbing to his primal race. Maybe there's something going on there. maybe the ring of divine suffering is impacting him. I mean, maybe she and Maria being emblazoned upon his chest is really starting to bring him grave suffering. I mean, I don't know, but I feel like this was important and he is not thinking it's as important as it is. There was also a moment soon after they got their loot, and like Mordecai was just in awe of how powerful they've become. And I think he makes note that they're two of the most powerful crawlers he's ever worked with. And I kind of hate these moments in books and in movies where, a person gets touted as being so like powerful and not necessarily unbreakable, but it's almost like the story is propping them up to take them down a peg. And it's like that hero's journey, right? Where you have to be on top to then fall, to then rise again. And I'm just like, haven't they gone through enough? I don't know. But then it also made me wonder, like Carl and Donut are just two crawlers. They're just two crawlers. And yes, they are indeed very powerful, but like how buffed are all the other crawlers that have survived, all 32,000? They have to be at least a fraction of how powerful they've become. Like, is this good for the outcome of faction wars? Like, are they stronger than most people when they arrive on floor 9? I don't know. Speaking of faction wars, we find something interesting out about the former crawlers, that they were able to pick a race. And I think they came in at level 60, but there's also like that intangible piece too, where it's not necessarily counted in their level, like that experience. Like you cannot tell me that Rosetta is only level 60. Like she seems pretty knowledgeable. I don't know if that's even that even encompasses just how formidable she is. But there's also like this moment where Carl references Juicebox's level as well and says, depending on her form, she's like level 17, level 100 and something. And it just made me wonder, how high is Juicebox's level? Because I think Juicebox, like at one turn, seems super vulnerable and is just craving love and affection and compassion. But then she also seems scary, like, and unhinged, if I'm being transparent. I think her level is actually scary high. I think she's going to be quite the contender. I mean, at least I'm hoping for that. Speaking of Juicebox, I feel like we should actually talk about the NPC truce in a little bit more depth. A lot happened in these beginning chapters, and namely was the marriage between Juicebox and Louis. And I am going to be honest, I didn't quite get the significance of this. Like, I'm pretty sure none of the other factions were having these marital events happening to solidify the block truce. So I wasn't sure of what the importance or significance was by having Juicebox and Louis have a marriage. Honestly, I mean, whatever. I don't know if it holds that much weight outside of the dungeon, but Louis has become quickly like one of my favorite characters within this series. I mean, I think I initially would categorize Carl as being grounded and solid, but I think Louis is the one that's grounded and solid and just like in tune with everyone and himself. And I think he is horrified. I think he's horrified of Juicebox, but I do think he really also cares for her. And I think he kind of understood the importance in just taking one for the team. Like, I know Carl told him, like, hey, like, you really don't have to do this. But I think Louis just thought, like, whatever would make the alliance and the transition into faction wars after the ceasefire the most stable, the most seamless, I think he was just willing to do. There was also, like, that really sweet moment where, like, Donut's, like, chatting him and saying, tell her you love her. And he's like, I love you? Like, poor Juicebox just seems so starved for attention. And Louis, he just seems like an overall good guy, but I think he's in a little bit over his head, if I'm being very honest with you. Also, I would be remiss if I did not talk about Ferdinand at least a little bit. I think it is so deeply weird that he gave up his mayorship of Shantytown for a hat and the possibility of getting his mount back, not even like the guarantee. And I'm starting to wonder, like, what did Donut ever see in like this weirdo? Like, I don't know. But part of me wonders if he just hasn't like woken up yet. I I feel like there's like this possibility that Donut will rekindle her relationship with him. Is that off base? Possibly. But we've seen this before and with the NPCs, and I'm not sure if it's the same with Ferdinand because he was kind of like implanted in the dungeon like after the fact. But I'm wondering if there's a way to like wake him up and then like Donut will maybe fall back in love with him. I mean, he's referring to her as his fiance. Is that foreshadowing or is that just him being a total creep? I don't know. I'll let you decide. But also there is the other issue of their adjutant. I just feel like this has to be a conflict of interest. Having Drick, who is a Valte, and the Valte Corporation taking over Boren, like, is it a conflict of interest to have somebody who has taken over the crawl have an adjutant within faction wars? Like, is that okay? I don't know. Transitioning a little bit, we also get some insane lore about the Nagas and the Blood Sultanate. We kind of find out just how seriously the Nagas take faction wars and the fact that their inner sanctum has never been breached. The fact that the Sephisor has never been found or killed in faction wars. And I mean, if anyone can do it, I do believe that Carl can do it, or at least find a way with his guild members to figure it out, especially with the addition of Tippett and Rosetta. But I'm starting to realize this is going to become insanely more difficult to eliminate the entire Blood Sultanate. And I'm starting to get really nervous that, well, one, Donut might not leave the 9th level, which I'm just like refusing to accept, but I have to acknowledge that it is a possibility. But I'm also starting to feel like Katya is going to use the Orchid, or at least going to have to use the Orchid. And I just know if she does use the Orchid, it's going to be whatever outcome she wants the least. My absolute favorite character from this set of chapters is Sir Rendlegore, or Rend. I love that little tummy acher so much. I mean, I love that one, Louis came up with the name, and then just the image of like him riding around Mongo's back, and gosh, he's just so adorable. And I love that Carl has a pet. I don't know, it just felt really fitting. It felt like they needed this dynamic. My favorite part though was like how, Donut's just absolutely against having him around, but then came extremely invested in finding a proper name for him. I mean, it's just very Donut coded, obviously, which leads perfectly into my favorite Donut quote. So there was like that moment, like when Rend comes out and like, Donut's taking it very seriously and it's a very egregious offense. And she was so frustrated with the appearance of Rend, and she was going on this tangential rant to Carl. And she is trying to explain why his entrance into their group is an issue. And she says, "Do you know who Cousin Oliver is, Carl?" And Carl says, "Was he that one cat with the really weird eye?" And Donut responds with, "No, Carl, that was my sister cousin, Ginger Snap, and we don't talk about her. Cousin Oliver was from the Brady Bunch. This thing is like that. Cousin Oliver, Scrappy Doo, Guppy on iCarly, April on the Gilmore Girls." She spat out that last one. Sidebar, I actually hated April on the Gilmore Girls, and I feel like that was a moment the show completely jumped the shark, in my opinion. And some of my least favorite episodes were when April actually entered the show and beyond. And I wholeheartedly agreed with the sentiment, but I also found it so deeply funny that, yes, Donut's saying it, but Matt is the one who wrote that. And like, sometimes I'm reminded that like he wrote this and it's not Donut actually saying these things. And it just kind of makes it a little bit more funny. But she continues and says, "All late series additions, all attempts to add something new and cute and exciting to a perfectly good cast that ended up making everything worse." And while I wholeheartedly agree with Donut's sentiment about adding late season characters, we all know how much I love Rend, and I'm actually really happy that he's part of their found family. And I do think Donut will come to love him. I do, as long as he doesn't eat Mongo. And now it's time to move on to my favorite segment, which is honorable mentions. This is a segment where I kind of just dump anything and everything I thought was important, but I couldn't neatly fit it into the episode. And the first thing is that even though Signet is no more, she's gone, she's not in the dungeon anymore, Carl could still be obligated for a third season on Vengeance of the Daughter. And this is 1000% going to happen, and it's going to happen at the most inconvenient time. Donut also picked a new class, and that is Deathbed Hellcat, and it's a long-range sniper and assassin class. Also, the Gate of the Feral Gods is back in play. Do I know what that means yet? Not really, but I do also think that the Sandus and Ghazi and Samantha's whole storyline is going to kind of come to a head as well on this level. So I also think that will happen at a very inconvenient time as well. Next, I feel like Carl would have been much better off just letting his hair grow back naturally. As much as I think Fabio Carl is just good for the plot and is pretty funny, I don't know if it was in the best interest of him to have these long flowing locks entering into a literal war. I love that we're getting more fast travel options in addition to Doggy Door, with like Louis' plane party planner. And side note, when Louis reminded us that Fyrus initially wanted to name Twister Party Planner, and Louis said it was stupid. And so he decided to name this aircraft in honor of Fyrus and call it Party Planner. I just feel like there's these moments that like are just so, they're mentioned offhand and they don't seem that important. And then they happen and it's just hits you right in the feels, man. Also, Donut freaking out about Louis wearing a donut hole shirt. It was really funny. And low-key, I want one of these shirts. They sound so funny. But then there's like that weird moment where Brittany and Louis looked at each other when, I can't remember who said it, but they're like, oh, at least Katya doesn't wear anything weird like that. And she went on the show and they were like, what is Katya wearing? I'm nosy. I want to know. I don't feel like I emphasize this enough, but Lorako sounds absolutely beautiful. But the lore with the Samaru dwarves and the Altry, I feel like this is important. Also, do you remember like Astrid's office and them kind of referencing the tree when they were talking about like the destruction of the Desperado Club? Like this is some 1000% going to come up in some way that's going to be more important. Wait, hold on. Is this going to be like connected to like the Vengeance of the Daughter storyline? Okay, wait a darn minute here. Okay, so Carl still has like that body from Signet. Is Samantha going to get reanimated? And like, is this going to somehow be tied to like the Altry and Samantha and Ghazi in the Sand Ooze? Like, is all this going to kind of, I mean, not Ghazi, but like, is the Sand Ooze and Signet, and is Signet going to come back like somehow with the Altry? Is Samantha going to be like reanimated? I think it's her mother's body. All right, let me like regroup here. Let me condense my this is not in my notes. Let me like condense my thoughts here. I think there is a possibility that the Altry has been like this thread throughout the levels for sure. But I think there is something that's going, I could just feel it. Like something's going to come to a head with the Altry and Samantha. And I feel like, is Signet going to come back somehow? I just feel like this story arc, like the Vengeance of the Daughter, is not finished. And they're going to find a way to make it interesting and get their money's worth out of Carl, especially because he's a top crawler. The next thing I wanted to mention, and I don't know how important it is yet or the implications of what this means, other than access to the Desperado Club has been kind of stunted for right now. But Hamed the Nightworm, Astrid's husband, has taken over the Desperado Club. And I know this is important. And I know this is potentially either another quest or another storyline woven within the dungeon. But I just know this is going to be a bigger deal, I think, than I initially anticipated. And the last honorable mention, I think it's really funny that their truce has been changed to the name The Good Guys. Some looming questions I have moving forward in book 7. Number 1, who will Donut's new sponsor be? Will Dr. Hugh find a way to hide behind a new organization to help support them within the crawl? Will it be some other unrelated organization? I don't know. Next, will Katya use the orchid? And if so, when? I am just so concerned in this story that we are going to lose members of her found family. And if it's kati or donut, like, I don't know how I'm going to cope with that, and I'm just so stressed moving forward. And lastly, what is their strategy following the ceasefire? I don't know. You're gonna have to tune in next week to find out. Join me next week as I continue our crawl through book number 7 in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, This Inevitable Ruin by Matt Dinniman. What did I miss that you would like me to chat a little bit more about? Let me know down in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to get alerted when there's new episodes. Thank you so much for crawling with me today. Have a great week. Bye.